Training camps are officially open around the NFL. Our mailbag today on Rodgers, Mahomes, CeeDee Lamb. We got holdouts. We've got big plays happening already in training camps around the NFL. Some intrigue and a whole lot more on today's Peacock and Williamson.
NFL analyst Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson bring you expert NFL analysis every day in less than 30 minutes. Get an inside look at the NFL on the field and in the front office with elite breakdowns to next-level analysis and in-depth information only for the real NFL fans. This is Peacock and Williamson, and it starts now.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock here, rolling solo. Matt Williamson on vacation. We'll welcome him back Monday. I've got some guests the rest of the week as well to cover numerous teams around the NFL. I think we'll be talking to Kyle Krabs of Locked On Dolphins and Locked On NFL Scouting as well. Really smart dude. Love chatting ball with him. He'll be my guest on Thursday's episode. You can find me at BD Peacock. Make sure you're subscribed up to the podcast on YouTube or wherever you are listening to this episode of Peacock and Williamson. Shout out to all the everydayers out there. Make sure you will hit that subscribe button. It helps us out a lot. And I know a lot of you that listen even every day aren't subscribed. So yeah, subscribe up. You know when we have a new episode that goes live. Today's episode brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first ticket purchase. Terms apply. Kind of a bizarre story out of New York. New Jersey with the Jets and Aaron Rodgers, and just a little bit of extra weirdness. And you don't want to make too much of some of these things, but we've gone over the story of Aaron Rodgers and how he was absent and he was somewhere. We didn't know exactly where, if he was in a cave, if he was on hallucinogenic drugs or something, somewhere missing OTAs. And apparently we know now that he was on a vacation in Egypt. And Aaron Rodgers, in fact, actually showed up to the first day of training camp with an Egyptian goddess named Bastet on his shirt. Shout out to at the Jet Press who broke down who the goddess is. It's like a cat on his shirt, an Egyptian goddess, and the goddess Bastet is the goddess of protection against contagious diseases and evil spirits. So there you go. That was the shirt that Aaron Rodgers wore into camp. Like, this is the fun thing. 49ers camp are talking about mustaches. Jets camp talking about Egyptian vacations and goddesses. And, there's holdouts in some places. We'll get to CeeDee Lamb and the Dallas Cowboys as well. But there's never a shortage of some sort of a storyline, even as weird as it might be in some cases in for some teams. But I want to go to Diana Rossini, who's really plugged in. She was on the Athletic podcast with Chase Daniel, and they were talking about this Aaron Rodgers thing with the Jets. And Robert Saleh, went public with his comments like, Aaron Rodgers is supposed to be here and he's not here during OTAs, and Rodgers got fined for it. And Rodgers did say at the opening of training camp that, he's an adult, and the scheduling that he thought that, he scheduled it based on last year's schedule, and the schedule wasn't out and he didn't know when he scheduled this vacation. And it turned out that, the schedule was different this year, and it was a conflict, and he was still going on that vacation, but that the Jets already knew about it. And it sounded like Robert Saleh acted like he didn't know about it, even though the Jets absolutely knew about it. And so from Saleh's standpoint, I don't know if you call this a positive or negative. Is there like a little rift there? Robert Saleh just wanting to treat Aaron Rodgers like any one of the other 53 or 90 guys in training camp on the roster. Is that a good precedent to set? Do you want to treat your star quarterback differently? And we know that star quarterbacks and star players are treated differently by teams. But, is it right or wrong? I don't know. I'd love to hear what you guys think about it. I don't have a problem with it. Robert Saleh finding Aaron Rodgers and saying, look, this is the schedule. You're supposed to be here, so be here. Cancel your vacation. Reschedule it. You're a multi-millionaire. You can go to Egypt anytime you want. Don't schedule it while we have something that we expect you to be here for, like a mandatory mini camp. So that's what's going on in New York. I don't think it's a big problem. Saw some video clips, and we're going to see a lot of those video clips around the NFL, and fan bases getting super excited about a slow motion, pass and a big play that happens in camp. And, they don't have pads on. They're getting ramped up slowly the first week of training camp. And but Aaron Rodgers looking like he's, his drop back looks okay, coming off an Achilles, throwing the ball. So it doesn't have a real noticeable limp or anything like that I've seen, but he hasn't got hit yet either. So still some physical hurdles for Aaron Rodgers. Hopefully for the Jets, mentally, he's in a good spot. And Robert Saleh is in a good spot. And that Jets locker room is in a good spot. Really talented football team. A lot of expectations there for Aaron Rodgers and the New York Jets in 2024. And if Rodgers is right, I think they're going to be a phenomenal football team this year. And actually, think if things go terrible, you might have a new coach and who knows, maybe a new GM as well in New York. So a lot riding on the 2024 season for the New York Jets. And now we know about the Egypt vacation for Aaron Rodgers. Big fan of camels, apparently. He rode a camel, said they're kind of ornery. Those are the things we learned about a day one of training camp in the NFL. Speaking of those videos that get people too excited or too hyped, Patrick Mahomes it was the pro day throw from day one of Kansas City Chiefs camp. The rollout left. If you haven't seen it, I'm sure you can find it somewhere on social media. And it got the NFL world buzzing, first of all, because they were one of the only teams that were practicing and had practice video out. So everybody saw it. Everybody retweeted it. Everyone was like, oh no, here comes Mahomes. And he's got another weapon to play with, dropping a long bomb to the fastest man in combine history, Xavier Worthy, wearing number 1, looking quite small and skinny out there, looking like a junior high kid, Xavier Worthy, but he is fast. And he got behind the defense and roll out, thrown across his body, deep ball down the field, Mahomes finding Xavier Worthy. And by the way, not only the first round pick, Xavier Worthy, working in with the ones for the Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs. Not a lot of Super Bowl champion teams have rookies that are ready to roll in and earn a starting role. But their second round pick, left tackle Kingsley Suamataia, in a battle with last year's draft pick Wanye Morris, also working in with the ones. So both of the first 2 picks for the Kansas City Chiefs potentially starting for the Chiefs in week 1 of their rookie seasons, playing pretty important roles at left tackle and wide receiver in Xavier Worthy and Kingsley Suamataia. So and that's all from one video clip in Chiefs camp. But it does get you excited for some NFL football. So I can't fault Chiefs fans or anybody else out there for drawing conclusions and getting excited, seeing things like that with their football teams. And I'm sure all of you fans out there will see those clips. And the ones I really hate, though, because that clip was cool. You see the whole play. You see it from, like this was sort of like a field level end zone almost view. But the ones I hate are the ones that the teams put out. And they look beautiful, but for someone like me who I want to study it and see what happened on a play and see why a guy is open, why he makes the catch. I want to see the route. I want to see the protection. I want to see all the things that are part of a play. But the ones I hate is when it's like a, really high quality video shot by the team's social media, team. And it's like slow motion. It shows the quarterback and their face and they drop back and then they let go of the ball. And then it's like zoomed in on just the ball and you see the ball spiraling down. And then eventually you see like some hands and you see a guy catch it. It's like, it looks cool and it's great for something to post, but man, I would love to see a grainy, even a cell phone footage from one of the beat writers on the sideline of how the play developed. That's what I want to see. So I get frustrated when the only clips of practice you get are these, sort of cherry picked, slow motion, zoomed in plays where you can't really tell what the heck is going on. Xavier Worthy, though, man, if the Chiefs got one in Xavier Worthy, and we know he's fast, and I think he's a good football player. And by the way, reports are Rashee Rice, ownership for the Chiefs said that they haven't heard anything from the league. There's no expectation right now that Rashee Rice is going to be suspended either. So all good news early going in Chiefs camp. No weirdness with the quarterback. You got high-end rookies that are already on the practice field working in with the starters. And it looks like some suspensions that could have been handed down by the league at this point look like they might not happen. So some weirdness in New York with Rodgers and the Jets. Nothing to be alarmed about yet, I don't think, unless there's some big rift there in the locker room. But all positive vibes for Patrick Mahomes, Xavier Worthy, the Kansas City Chiefs rolling into 2024. About ready to put some rings. Those rings, that ceremony's happening too. So all good vibes for the Kansas City Chiefs right now. Big questions, and we're going to go to the mailbag next on the Dallas Cowboys. CeeDee Lamb, you got Dak Prescott, you got Micah Parsons. Who are they going to sign? Who are they not going to sign out of that group, with CeeDee Lamb now officially holding out from Cowboys camp? And more questions from around the NFL next. Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. And in fact, prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch, the closer it gets to kickoff for football games, the closer it gets to the opening band going on at a concert. Killer last minute deals, all in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes all the guesswork out of buying Major League Baseball tickets or concert tickets or comedy theater event tickets as well. Last minute deals, you can save up to 60% off buying those last minute tickets for any of those events. And my favorite part is the fees. No surprise fees at checkout. You can toggle on the feature for all-in pricing. It's phenomenal. You know exactly what you're going to get. You get the view from your seat, panoramic. You move your phone around and you can see exactly what it looks like from your seat before you buy and know you're getting a great deal on those tickets. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Going to Jared on Twitter, who had a question about the Dallas Cowboys and CeeDee Lamb and how they're going to get this whole thing done. CeeDee Lamb officially holding out, no contract in sight. I'm sure he's trying to get something close to what Justin Jefferson got. I'm sure the Dallas Cowboys, knowing that they've got Micah Parsons, knowing that they've got Dak Prescott, trying to keep that money down a little bit. And obviously another first-round wide receiver in Brandon Ayuk, holding in now with the San Francisco 49ers. He was on the sideline today as camp got started Wednesday, but had a backpack on, T-shirt, shorts. He's not practicing, and so but trying not to get fined. So still not a deal for Brandon Ayuk, and I have a feeling he's not going to do any kind of working out with the team until he does get that new contract, or until it gets close enough to where he's got no choice, but he has to start playing football so he doesn't start losing game checks. So that's where Brandon Ayuk is. But with CeeDee Lamb, it's interesting. And Jared asks, Dallas can only pay 2 stars. What do you trade for Micah Parsons? Well, Jared, if you are a fan of another team, and this question is you thinking you can come in and snipe Micah Parsons, I would say that there's probably a 99% chance that if they can only keep even one of those 3 guys, Micah Parsons probably the one. I really think Dak is I would put Dak third. Not because quarterback's not important, not because Dak's not good, and Dak will make a whole bunch of money in free agency if and when he does hit the market this offseason. You can sign both of the other guys for one Dak. I think that's what it comes down to for me. And you just need, and it's hard because, man, we see a lot of teams trying to find quarterbacks, and it's not the easiest thing in the world. And look, Micah Parsons is the third guy as far as just timing goes. So if they do sign Dak and CeeDee Lamb, then that means they're trying to sign all 3. And I don't think they would trade Micah Parsons. I just think there's so little of a chance that they would do that. But to me, it's Dak. And $60 million a year. You've seen that movie so many times. How is it going to look different if you pay all these guys? The team around Dak is just going to be worse than it has been. It's not going to be better than what they've done, and they can't go win playoff games. So you just want to see something different, I think. And it's not that Dak's not good, but I think you could probably build a juggernaut with a cheaper quarterback and pay not only CeeDee Lamb and Micah Parsons, but some other pieces and make your entire roster better rather than just paying those big 3. And you would be probably a pretty good football team, but you'd have to get really lucky in the draft and hit some young players that are big-time contributors, and because you're not going to be paying a lot of guys. And we've seen how it's gone this offseason. They've done the Dallas Cowboys did less than any team in the NFL throughout this offseason because you got these big contracts looming. And it's probably why they're playing hardball with CeeDee Lamb. So they're trying to get all three guys done. And you might have to try to get a pretty good deal on one of them. So who knows? Maybe CeeDee Lamb is the odd man out and he ends up playing on his fifth-year option like Brandon Ayuk and becoming a free agent next offseason. Then there's like a tag and then there's a tag and then there's maybe a tag and trade opportunity. So that's the way I see it going. If for some reason Micah Parsons ends up being available, I think he's a 2 first-round pick guy. I think it's hard. Micah Parsons, it's harder to find a Micah Parsons than a Dak even, right? And I think CeeDee Lamb, there's so many good wide receivers coming out every single year. And I know wide receiver contracts are going crazy. At some point, one of these teams, and I guess we've seen it a few times recently with wide receivers, but we haven't really seen it that much or really at all with quarterbacks. When's a team going to say, man, the money's getting so crazy at this position, we think it's better to not spend top of the market money on this position and go back to the draft and spend money on multiple players elsewhere? The Dallas Cowboys, I think, are, and really the 49ers with Ayuk too. I think these are the first two teams that were, the Eagles have found a way to get everybody signed. We saw the Saints do that for years. I think a motivated team can kick the can down the road and figure out how to do these things. But when you start talking about a $50+ million quarterback, you have to be pretty. You have to find some very interesting ways to circumvent the salary cap and keep a thing together and keep the thing together for a long time if that's what you're trying to do. I would vote for the Dallas Cowboys to let Dak walk just because I want to see, just from a fan of the game and, sitting on the couch with my popcorn next offseason, seeing how things go, seeing how the Dallas Cowboys go about finding a quarterback, maybe somebody in-house they like a lot as at least a stopgap or a long-term option. Trey Lance, a big preseason for him in Dallas. Cooper Rush is a pretty good quarterback. They won some games when he was filling in for Dak. And then seeing what Dak gets in free agency, where he goes, and what dominoes that makes around the league. Because it's just fun to see something we don't see very often is a big-time quarterback hitting free agency because teams don't let him. I, for one, would like to see the Dallas Cowboys go that route. Pay Parsons, pay CeeDee Lamb, and then have some money left over to go do some other things and make a change at quarterback. See if the sequel to the movie's different instead of seeing Fast and Furious 9 in Dallas. You know what I mean? Like how many times do we need to see that movie? Because I feel like that's the path you're on with Dak, as good as he is in the Cowboys. And even if you get worse, I would rather see something different if I'm the Dallas Cowboys than a first round playoff exit. Question here from Todd. We got some pushback. Shout out to all the listeners out there. We did get some pushback in our tiered rankings episodes, mostly with quarterbacks, a little bit with defenses. Seems like everyone's okay with our rankings for running backs and wide receivers, those groups around the NFL. If you didn't check those out, we ranked the teams' quarterback groups, wide receiver rooms, AFC and NFC defenses. We split the defenses up into 2 episodes. Running backs, we got the best running back rooms in the NFL. Todd says, a healthy Brock Purdy all year. Thoughts? MVP? And on YouTube, is this actually, hold on, this might be Todd. No, it's not. It's another bearded man. 49ers faithful to the base says, so dropping dimes and reading offenses and making anticipated throws and throwing guys open makes Brock a tier 2 and can't escape with the run while putting up numbers better than Joe Montana, who had Jerry Rice and John Taylor and Dwight Clark under Bill Walsh. Really? Okay, yeah, right. So that upset that Brock Purdy didn't make the tier 1. I'm with Matt on the tier 2 for Brock Purdy right now. He's phenomenal, and he can do all those things you're talking about. And what's crazy is this week we learned that Brock Purdy actually wasn't done rehabbing his elbow surgery last year until November. So is there even more for Brock Purdy this year? He has his first ever NFL season. He had a rookie offseason where he was the number 3, number 4 quarterback coming into camp. He was hurt last year, rehabbing elbow surgery. This is his first season where he gets a full NFL offseason, healthy, and he was already so good. How much better can he get? Will he be a tier 1 guy this year? The sample is small for Brock Purdy, which is part of it with the tier 1, tier 2 guys. You don't just roll into tier 1 after 1 year as a starter. But yeah, there's a good chance he is a tier 1 quarterback next year. Push back on another quarterback, a quarterback that has been considered tier 1 by a lot of people. He is currently in Los Angeles with the Chargers, Justin Herbert, and more from the Peacock and Williamson mailbag next. Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. It's the formula for winning championships. It's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and so much more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered with over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die. You'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. And it couldn't be easier. Big green check mark. You know that part is going to fit your vehicle. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car into the MVP. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. All right, Justin Herbert. Is Justin Herbert being disrespected right now? At least one listener seems to think so. Steven, on Frequent Listener, an everydayer on YouTube, says, Herbert in tier 2 made me sick to my stomach. He's mostly calling out Matt. They were mostly Matt Williamson's rankings, and I was kind of helping out a little bit. So if you're mad, get mad at Matt while he's on vacation. I don't think he even has cell phone service right now to even check anything, but hit him up at Williamson NFL so he just gets a whole bunch of hate when he gets off of the plane. No, don't do that. Don't bother Matt during his vacation. Steven says, I'll take Herbert over everyone not named Mahomes or Allen. The idea that Burrow wins games with the Chargers of the 2020 to 2023 seasons is crazy to me, and I think Herbert definitely wins games in Cincy. Stafford is my number one NFC quarterback as well, but over Herbert is quite a stretch for me. I mean, it's fair. The Herbert is one of the most difficult because he came on the scene and played so well immediately as a rookie, and he's so physically talented. And quarterbacks, fair or not, get a lot of credit when teams win, QB wins and all that, and get maybe too much discredit when their teams lose. And things have been weird for Herbert in Los Angeles with the Chargers. And even the receiving group right now, I don't know if it's going to benefit him this year. And he probably will throw less this year under Harbaugh because of how that team is built. And they're going to, they built the line, which should help keep him healthy and not, puncturing his, what do you have, ribs or broken ribs that I don't know. He's had some injuries too. It's been a little bit of a tough one for Justin Herbert. And I'll buy the argument if someone says he's supposed to be in a higher tier and ahead of Burrow. And, if I was drafting, I'd probably take Herbert over Burrow. But the results have been a little off. And I'm not going to discredit Burrow because there's better talent and better coaching staff in place for him. I'm not going to discredit Brock Purdy, but I'm not going to give him too much credit either, right? So that's kind of the game we're playing, is what's the right amount of credit to give a guy? And I didn't find any problems with the rankings that Williamson had. I do think that there is an argument for Herbert to be much higher. And if the situation gets right, and even if maybe the volume numbers and the raw numbers and the fantasy football numbers aren't there as much for Herbert in the Harbaugh era for the Chargers, more wins, I think, will help shine up his reputation. It'll be a lot easier to put him into that tier 1 again, where he has been and probably where he belongs. James on Twitter. So actually, hold on. Let's do one more quarterback question. This one is from, and I'm interested to hear what Williamson, if you're listening to this, chime in and reply to Steel Bleeder on Twitter, who says, more likely Justin Fields plays 51% or more of Steelers quarterback snaps, or Wilson starts and wins a playoff game. More likely. I think it's by far more likely that Wilson starts and wins a playoff game because Wilson is going to get first crack at being the quarterback. And I think that probably means he's going to have a pretty large grace period, which means it'll be hard for Justin Fields unless he is just lights out in camp and is already pushing Wilson. Whoever starts the season at quarterback is going to get a good chunk. And so that might be 50% of the season right there before you're in a position where you actually make a change, unless Wilson is that awful. And I think Wilson's good enough to not be so awful that you just immediately go to Justin Fields. Although Wilson hasn't played amazing in some recent seasons either. So for Fields, it's all about how quickly he looks like he is competing and maybe even should start over Wilson from the start. Because if Fields isn't starting by week 1, I'm absolutely taking the under on Justin Fields playing 51% of the season, which means a team that's got a really good defense like the Pittsburgh Steelers, who are always a team that's in the mix. I think it's much more likely that Russell Wilson starts and wins a playoff game than Justin Fields playing 51% or more of the Steelers snaps at quarterback this season. I would prefer to see Fields playing, to be honest with you, but it sounds like Wilson's going to get first crack. And first crack for a veteran like Wilson, again, unless it's a disaster, that probably means, half the season before they make a change to someone like Justin Fields. And Justin Fields has to prove he can get the ball out in timing too, or else they're going to just be like, well, he's just a straight up backup and we hope he doesn't play because he's in some systems, in some ways, you're almost non-functional. Will he be on the field together with Wilson? Matt seems to think there might be some of that going on. And he could maybe carry the ball a little bit, be in some packages. Would that be fun? It wouldn't get him to 51%, though, again, unless he just becomes the full-time starter for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I do like the fit for Fields in Arthur Smith's offense better than some of the timing-based, West Coast, Shanahan, McVay, offshoot offenses he's played in Chicago. Last one here. This one's from James. He says, what is the number one thing that, if added, would help cut down on the frequency of draft busts? Some kind of pre-draft mini camp practice time with the coaching staffs, or longer interviews, or coaches have plenty of time free in the offseason to interact with these prospects. And I think there's a lot more conversations now than there has ever been with players and prospects. I mean, starting in the and I don't know what exactly the protocol is now, but I know in the COVID offseason, coaches and GMs were doing Zoom calls and talking with prospects all the time. But Kyle Shanahan talked to Trey Lance before they drafted him like 30 times before the draft. Like, he thought he had a really good idea of who he was. And guess what? That didn't help. He traded him after 4 starts. So I think the thing you said about the minicamp practice time, which would never happen, they would, they don't, agents don't want to let their players, do things physically because they can get hurt, right? So the less they do, like a full practice, and you would want some hitting happening, you wouldn't want full speed to really learn about a guy. So pre-draft minicamp practices, that would be fun. I think the Senior Bowl is the closest thing you get to anything like that. And I think, leaning on the Senior Bowl heavily helps. Absolutely. You know a lot more about a player, how he practices, how he performs through a week of practice. But aside from that, and it can't happen, is coaches and whoever the decision makers are spending more. GMs can and scouts can, but then when coaches get involved, they just watch the film of players, but actually being at their college practices and really understanding what's going on there would be the way. And you can't be everywhere at once. You can't spend that much time in a building, in practice, doing your thing with players. So there's just always going to be busts. And to be honest with you, I think it's analysis paralysis too. I think there is too many cooks in the kitchen in NFL front offices that are involved in making picks. Sometimes it's an owner who's more meddlesome than others, and he says, I just want a quarterback, and I think this player is going to sell jerseys, so I want you to draft Johnny Manziel, even though there might be a scout that's like, Johnny Manziel's not even an NFL quarterback. What are we doing? And that's how That's how a lot of weird things happen, especially with quarterbacks, or how a team like the New York Giants say don't want to move off of Daniel Jones. It's like, ownership is like has a say in a lot of these things. So even if the GM and the scouts have it all right, maybe they're not even allowed to execute the plan they want. But there's too many cooks in the kitchen, too many opinions. To be honest with you, I think if you found the best evaluator and you said, this guy's making all the decisions, give him information, let him go. But nope, coaches want their guy and GMs want their guy. And then there's, a million scouts and different people, and they all have their guys. And then you end up with, like, I think too many opinions. I think it actually hurts teams because they should be better than the consensus. Like, the consensus media draft boards are no worse than NFL teams at evaluating talent. That's why I always push back when I say something about a team's draft, and a fan of that team says, "Well, I think they know a little bit more than you." And it's like, history tells us that they really don't. They get it wrong a lot, and they get to sit and talk to these prospects. They get face to face. They get to work them out. They have the medical background. Jay Ajayi was a big one. I was like, how is Jay Ajayi still on the board? This dude is a phenomenal running back, one of the best running backs in this draft class. Turns out after the draft, you find out, oh yeah, he's got bone on bone in his knee. He's going to have a short career. That's why he fell in the draft. But he was still better than running backs that went ahead of him, even though he only played for 3 years in the NFL. He was at least good for the time that he was on the field. And so even with the extra information that teams have, they're not better at drafting than consensus media draft boards or really good evaluators that are in the media or just do it as a hobby that are not employed by NFL teams. Teams aren't better, and the bad teams are even worse. Why is that? I think there's almost too many opinions in a draft room sometimes. I think too much information potentially, and knowing what information to use and having the right plan and not drafting for need because you're trying to win football games too. You're not trying to just draft the best player every round, which ideally you would be able to do, and find all your quote unquote like short-term needs, find all of that in free agency. Just draft the best player. Like, I don't care. We don't need a wide receiver right now. That is the best player. We're going to draft that guy. Teams don't do that. They fit the need to their team and then draft from that group of players. So there's a million things, and I don't know if the pre-draft process, I don't know if much can change. And in fact, I think it might start to get harder because I think players are going to want to do less and less. And who knows, maybe less combine will help. We saw Marvin Harrison didn't do anything. He's like, well, I play football, so I'm going to practice football. I'm not going to practice track. And it's easy for a guy who's thought of as one of the top prospects in the draft to do that. But if you just didn't even look at testing numbers and all that other stuff, and you just went strictly on the college tape only, and like the draft happened in February, would teams be better? I don't think they would be worse. And potentially maybe draft less busts at that point. Who knows? All right. Appreciate all the questions and everybody who listens every single day here to Peacock and Williamson. Make sure you hit that subscribe button on YouTube or wherever you are listening to this podcast. Back talking Miami Dolphins and the AFC East with Kyle Krabs of Locked On Dolphins and Locked On NFL Scouting on tomorrow's episode. We'll have another guest for Friday. Then Matt joining us back again Monday, and he'll be at Steelers camp. And so we'll get some insight there as well. Thanks everybody for listening. Back tomorrow right here, Peacock and Williamson.